This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Welcome in, everyone. Another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Earlier this week, we broke down the Sun Belt, and we stay in that geographical area and break down the Big 12, which for now has Oklahoma and Texas. It'll be a different looking conference come next year, and the man who wrote it up for the VSiN College Football Betting Guide is Matt Youmans. And just a reminder, folks, power ratings, picks, previews, Pro, as in become a VSiN Pro subscriber, and you'll get all access pass to our betting tools, betting splits, and that college football betting guide that I mentioned, as well as the NFL betting guide. So both those are available. So if you're ready to turn a profit this year on the gridiron, the only way to get those guides and everything we have to offer is to become a VSiN Pro subscriber. Head on over to vsin.com/subscribe. So without further ado, welcome in Mr. Youmans, Matt Youmans. Matt, breaking down this conference, 14 teams. We'll get into all of them and best bets that you have, but you know, as you broke this conference down, did any of these teams drastically change your initial opinion as you did those deep dives?
Yeah, I don't know about dramatic opinion changes, but I did have some stronger opinions on teams after I did all the research and writing on the Big 12. I felt like I had a lot stronger opinions on some of the win totals in the Pac-12, which is now the Pac-4. But hey, at least the Big 12 still got a conference, right? I've still got some win total plays I like here in the Big 12. Some teams I think you should follow. Some teams I think are going to be fades, and we can hit on all those now. This is a monster conference this year, Tim, with 14 teams, and really there are no real bad teams in the Big 12. I mean, there's always a couple teams at the bottom that look weaker than the rest. But I think this is a pretty strong conference top to bottom.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. And what I'll do is I'll go in order of the odds as they sit right now. And then we'll hit on some win totals. And at the end of the podcast, we will put a bow on it and make it nice and neat to close things up as we get closer and closer to the start of the football season. And Matt and I's Thursday chats breaking down the card that is ahead of us. But once again, Matt was the author of the Big 12 preview, so let's jump into it, Matt. Texas, a team that is the betting favorite, DraftKings, even money to win the Big 12, circa plus 105. That has come down about 5 cents in the past week or so when I grabbed it at plus 110. It was higher in the offseason. I think some plus 120s were out there on Texas. Win total pretty universally now sitting at 9.5. And you know, Matt, this is a Texas team that has gone under their win total 10 of the last 11 years. They have not won this conference since Colt McCoy beat Ndamukong Suh in the infamous put 1 second back on the clock game against Nebraska in 2009. So what do you make of Texas this year? And is it finally a time where we can say Texas is back?
Well, I think you can say that after Texas proves it, because I still need to see it to believe it. In the first 2 years of the Steve Sarkisian era, I've seen enough of Sark to be, I think, skeptical of what might happen. Now, I will say that two of the guys I know who are closest to the Texas program, who are typically skeptical about this team every year, and that's Paul Stone and Bobby Buckets Brubeck. Those guys are surprisingly optimistic about this Texas team. And both have told me in the past couple weeks that this is when that run of Longhorn unders on the season win total ends. And this is when Texas's drought of not winning the Big 12 ends this year. So there's too much talent for Sark to screw it up. I still think there's a chance Sark could screw it up. I'm not a big fan of him as especially a game day coach. But you're right. Texas hasn't won the Big 12 since 2009. They're about to move to the SEC, so if they don't win a conference this year, Tim, it could be a long, long time until Texas wins a conference championship. I think Quinn Ewers and his development is going to tell us a lot about, I guess, how good this Texas team can be. Ewers started 10 games last season. His numbers were not that impressive. 58% completions, only 15 TDs in those 10 games. Now, he's obviously got some big-time wideouts to throw to. He does lose Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. Robinson was a huge, huge help to the Texas quarterbacks last year, 1,580 yards and 18 touchdowns. And I think running backs are replaceable, though. And C.J. Baxter, a freshman, is a guy who's got a ton of talent, could step right in there. You know, you got Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, big-time wide receivers. But here's the key. Once you get past all the skill position players, the offensive line returns a combined 101 career starts. I'm not sure, Tim, how to rank offensive lines, but I can tell you that Texas ranks in the top 10. Offense averaged 34.5 points a game last year. Should be at least as good or not better. Probably should be better. Okay, so preseason hype is one thing. Doing it is another. Longhorns have road games against Alabama and Baylor in September. Let's see. October 7th is a game with Oklahoma. It's a pretty favorable schedule. Kansas State and Texas Tech at home. It looks like the schedule lays out for Texas to get over 9.5 wins and contend for a college football playoff spot. But because of Texas's track record, I just can't do it, Tim. I lean under 9.5. I say I got to see it to believe it. But when I say I lean under 9.5, I say that means I didn't bet it. So it's just, a slight opinion. I think this team's got a ton of talent on paper, just like you do. But I'm more, I think, skeptical than most about Sark putting it all together.
Yeah, I think Sark is the biggest question mark to me because this team has the most talent by far in this conference, Matt, as you kind of laid it out. I mean, yes, they do lose Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, both drafted in the NFL, Bijan being a top 10 pick. C.J. Baxter, a five-star recruit, is expected to be the starting running back. I love the wide receivers. You mentioned A.D. Mitchell coming over from Georgia, the production he had in his career there. You bring back Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, the tight end Sanders, their top three receivers. You know, Isaiah Nayer is a guy that you mentioned, explosive speed from Wyoming, tore his ACL last year in the fall. The offensive line should be the best in the conference, one of the best in the country. The defense brings back 6 starters, went to the portal to get starting safety from Arkansas. And all 5 of their losses last year, Matt, came by a touchdown or less. So you look at positive regression, but you could also look at that's coaching, right? I mean, they blew multiple 2-touchdown leads, Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. They lost the bowl game to Washington. So the way I attacked it, I took Texas to win the conference. I think anything with a plus sign is fair game, because if we get to that point, which, I would be pretty shocked if Texas isn't one of the top 2 teams in this conference, Matt. And if Texas does make the Big 12 championship game, on a neutral field, they're going to be probably a touchdown or more favorite against anyone out there in the league. You don't believe me? Look at the look-ahead lines across the market. Oklahoma's under a touchdown. You mentioned Paul Stone. I believe Paul Stone has laid it with Texas in that spot against Oklahoma. So, yeah, I don't trust this Texas team necessarily to not figure out a way to lose a couple games. I would lean over 9.5, but the play that I have is for them to win the Big 12. Quinn Ewers, his Heisman numbers have come down quite a bit. Circa has it at 15-1. They're 3-1 to make the playoff at DraftKings. But to me, the way I'm attacking it, Matt, is to take Texas to win this conference. Got it at plus 110. It's plus 105 at Circa. I still think that's worth a look there because, like I said, if they take on Texas Tech or Oklahoma or Kansas State, they're going to be around a touchdown favorite against any one of those teams when they meet in the Big 12 championship. So I'm putting my faith in Texas, Matt. So what could possibly go wrong trusting in a team that hasn't won this conference in a decade and a half?
Well, I think you're betting it the right way. Take a plus price on Texas, and that's in gambling terms, you're I think getting the best of it there.
Let's get to another team with the same win total, and you cashed on their under last year, and that's Oklahoma. So there also is their final season in the Big 12. Win total sitting at 9.5. DraftKings and Circa have the exact same price, even money to the over, minus 120 to the under. So a slight favorite for Oklahoma to go under their win total. Plus 350 at DraftKings to win the conference, plus 340 at Circa for Oklahoma to win the conference. Last year, I mentioned close losses. They had 5 of their 7 losses were by a touchdown or less. So if you're a believer in positive regression, that certainly could be a situation to look at. Very manageable non-conference schedule. Arkansas State, who we previewed on the Sun Belt, is an absolute train wreck. SMU, and then at Tulsa in the non-con. So pretty manageable out of the gates. This team should be, Matt, 5-0 going into their showdown against Texas because they play Cincinnati and Iowa State in conference play prior to the Longhorns. So there's a chance this Oklahoma team, which is, preseason top 20, ranked number 20 in the AP poll, this team could be 5-0 heading into that game with Texas. But you were fading the Sooners last year. I did not, and I lost that win total bet. So what are you doing this year with Oklahoma?
Again, this is a lean under 9. I did not bet this under the total, but Brent Venables, another guy I don't like as a head coach, and I said this last year over and over and over, that the first year Power 5 coach who's most likely to be a bust was Brent Venables. If you know him, he's got a volatile personality. He was a longtime defensive coordinator at Clemson in Oklahoma, and he had never been the leader of a program. And I was skeptical that he could do it. He did not handle the job well at all last year. Now, injuries played a factor, especially quarterback Dylan Gabriel. He was knocked out of the 55-24 loss at TCU, the 49-0 loss to Texas, one of the biggest embarrassments in Oklahoma football history. But this offense comes back with a lot of firepower. Can Venables do it on the defensive side? He's regarded as a defensive genius, but he had a defense in Oklahoma that allowed 30 points per game last season. He's got to be embarrassed by that. Well, he catches a break here because Oklahoma's schedule is, I'll say, as soft as it gets for Big 12 standards this year. Kansas State and Baylor are not on the schedule. I think the Sooners got to be 5-0 going into that Texas game on October 7th. 3 road games in the second half of the season: Kansas, Oklahoma State, and BYU are manageable. The home finale against TCU is too. So the schedule's actually looks like it's something that Brent Venables drew up this year for a bounce back for the Sooners. I think anything less than 9-3 would be ridiculous considering the schedule. So that's why I did not bet this under 9.5. If you want to make a case for the over, that's fine. I'm not going to argue. A year ago, I thought Oklahoma under its win total was one of the best bets out there. Right now, I'm not going to say that because this schedule is drastically different than it was a year ago. I still think Venables has a lot to prove as a head coach, and that's why I lean under. But hey, there's not going to be many layups in the Big 12. Even when you look at these games on paper, a lot of times you say, well, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. Some of these are going to be tricky spots, and I don't have a lot of faith in Brent Venables to get the job done. I do like Dylan Gabriel a lot as a quarterback, but hey, if he goes down, Sooners could be in trouble, and that's what happened last season. So again, lean under 9.5, but not the real strong opinion.
Yeah, Venables pretty busy in the transfer portal. Last year, obviously getting Dylan Gabriel to be their starting quarterback. They went to the portal and brought in the left tackle from Stanford. They brought in Austin Stogner from South Carolina, tight end, a pretty good player there. Desan McCullough from Indiana, pretty legit linebacker that I'm sure Wes Reynolds is not thrilled that he departed. So a lot of new pieces on this roster. So we will see how they all fit together, but universally thought to be probably a top 10, if not better, transfer portal class there for Oklahoma. And as you alluded to, pretty manageable schedule. And if they're not 5-0 going into that Texas game, that would be pretty surprising. To Kansas State, the reigning Big 12 champions, won in overtime against TCU last year, 31-28. Ultimately lost in the Sugar Bowl to Alabama. They lose Deuce Vaughn. They lose Adrian Martinez. But Will Howard has been there for what feels like a million years. And I know, Matt, you are a big, big fan of Chris Kleiman, their head coach, entering year number 5 there in the Little Apple. 5-1 are the Purple Cats to win this conference at DraftKings, 7-1 at Circa. Win total at DraftKings, 8.5, -155 to the under, and at Circa, 8, -115 to the over. So what do you make of the Purple Cats this year there for Kansas State?
Well, I'm going to surprise you here. I lean under 8.5 on K-State, but again, that's just a lean. Chris Kleiman, you're right, one of my favorite coaches. Much better than Sark or Venables, but he's got a tougher schedule to deal with this year. And also, you lose Deuce Vaughn. Dynamite running back, a big fan of Deuce Vaughn, 6th-round pick by the Cowboys. I think he's going to make a difference for the Cowboys. I really do. And not just as a gimmick player. I think he's going to be able to get some carries at running back and make a difference. Actually, Trayshawn Ward, a transfer from Florida State. DJ Giddens, a sophomore, going to be the replacements for Vaughn. I like Will Howard. 5 starts last year, Tim. K-State scored 38.8 points per game with Will Howard at quarterback. And again, it's always tough to separate offensive lines and how you rank them. But 5 starters returned here, and I think K-State's probably got one of the top 10 offensive lines in college football. Now, you do lose 6 starters on defense, including an edge rusher who was a first-round pick by the Chiefs. I still think you do return a lot of production here and a lot of talent. But let's take a look at the schedule, which you have to do when you're talking about the win totals. Southeast Missouri, Troy, and UCF on the home schedule. Not many speed bumps there in the month of September. But a trip to Missouri in the 3rd week is going to be a tough test. And the Wildcats have to go to Texas Tech and Texas. So you got three really difficult road games right there. Not, excluding the home games against TCU, Houston, Baylor, Iowa State, which should be wins. I think, man, it's tough. It's tough to count on this team going 9-3 without Deuce Vaughn and the defense losing its best player, and that's what it boiled down to for me. You lose basically your best offensive player, best defensive player, and for this bet to win, you got to win 9 games. I thought that's a little bit too much to ask. It's a tough road schedule. It's also a tough call for me here because I like Kleiman so much, but I'll lean under 8.5. I still think K-State, Tim, if the Longhorns and the Sooners fall on their face, no, I'm not going to be surprised if K-State wins the league. I want to ask you, do you think it was an indictment of the Big 12 a year ago that they were so outclassed by the SEC in the bowl games because K-State got whipped by Alabama 45-20 in the Sugar Bowl, and TCU got smoked 65-7 by Georgia in the championship game? Is that an indictment? The Big 12 just was not that good?
I would flip it and I would say it's an indictment on Sark and Venables a little bit, where Texas, to me, was the most talented team. They proved it in a game they should have beaten Alabama, and then they fell on their face in all these close games, blowing big leads. And I think TCU and Kansas State, they're not recruiting on the same level as Alabama and Georgia. And TCU to beat Michigan, obviously a lot of fortune goes their way, Matt, in that game where Jim Harbaugh looked like he didn't know what to do in the red zone. They're turning the ball over. They were asleep at the wheel in the first half. So you're not going to sneak by an SEC team, unless you're Texas Tech in the Texas Bowl against Ole Miss. As Kiffin looked like he wanted nothing to do with that bowl game. So no, I think the elite of the SEC is by far and away better than Kansas State and TCU. That's no knock on them, because really, Matt, I think Texas Tech and TCU and Kansas State probably shouldn't be winning that conference based off of recruiting rankings, and give them credit, because Texas and Oklahoma just massively underachieved. Look at what Oklahoma did in their bowl game, and I know bowl games, you could take with a grain of salt, but Oklahoma, they were right there with a Florida State team in the state of Florida. Florida State team that's getting preseason national championship hype, highest they've been ranked in quite some time, and Oklahoma is right there. So those two teams have the most talent. I think it's a bit of a question mark of their head coaching that they can't put it all together.
Okay.
What do you well, I guess I'll flip it back to you. What do you think it's to me, I would never argue that the Big 12 is a better conference or anywhere really near the SEC.
Mm-hmm. No, I just think it's interesting that the two teams in the championship game just got completely outclassed in the bowl by SEC teams. But you can always flip it and say, hey, Texas should have beat Alabama before the Quinn Ewers injury, in that September game in Austin. But, yeah, I mean, those two teams got smoked in the bowl game, in their bowl games. And you can't deny that. For some of the people who say the SEC is overrated, hey, look, I hate some of the weak scheduling that the SEC does. Some of the power teams do. Look at Georgia's schedule this year. It's a joke. But you can't deny how strong those teams are.
No, the proof's in the pudding. The national championships are all there. And, the SEC did make Georgia postpone their game against Oklahoma. So I guess you can give them a little bit of a pass there. But no, their schedule's a cakewalk to, a road game at Tennessee in late November. So we'll see with the Bulldogs. But a team that, has been getting a lot of hype. Our friend and friend of this podcast, Brent McMurphy, put Texas Tech at number 11 in his AP preseason poll. They were not ranked. They were the first team outside the top 25. Matt, you had Texas Tech at number 23 in your poll in the VSiN College Football Betting Guide. This is a team that is 10-1 to win the conference at DraftKings, 13-1 to win it at Circa. 7.5 is their win total. Really fascinating non-conference schedule. We've kind of talked about, the previous three teams not having much on their non-con. Well, how about a trip to Wyoming where they're a 2-touchdown favorite? It's going to be a primetime game in Laramie against a pretty good defensive squad in Wyoming. And then they turn around and they play Oregon at home in another primetime spot. So a lot of eyeballs potentially on Texas Tech right out of the chute this year. Tyler Shuck is back for another year, the Oregon transfer. Taj Brooks is back, their leading rusher. They bring back a lot of talent. I believe they bring back all of their starters on the offensive side of the ball. Won a lot of close games last year, which can make you a little bit worried if you're looking to back a team 4-0 in games decided by a touchdown or less. I certainly love their offensive coordinator, Zach Kittley. I won a lot of money betting on Western Kentucky when Bailey Zappi was there. He's entering year number 2 under Joey McGuire. So are you buying into the hype of the Red Raiders in 2023?
As soon as you said a team that's very popular, I was thinking, oh no, I hope he's not going to bring up Texas Tech next, because I like Texas Tech too. I don't want to be on the popular teams, Tim. I don't want to be on teams that are too popular in the preseason. But you have to respect Brent McMurphy, first of all, for his big brain and also for his first-class mustache. And if McMurphy likes Texas Tech, okay, I do too. I text one of the teams that I looked at here and said, okay, this is going to be a sleeper in the Big 12 race. Joey McGuire, I like a lot. You said it all about the coaching staff. We don't have to repeat it about Zach Kittley. I think this Texas Tech offense is going to be really good. And again, you're talking about offensive lines. You got 3 seniors on this line, and it has a combined 142 career starts. This should be one of the best offenses in the Big 12. I'm a little bit concerned about the defense. But I will say, man, the schedule is really intriguing. Because the Red Raiders, as you mentioned, opened the season as 2-touchdown favorites at Wyoming. I haven't bet this yet, but I'm probably going to take Wyoming plus 14. Cowboys have one of the strongest defenses in the Mountain West. That trip to Laramie is always tricky. I'm probably also going to bet Texas Tech in that home game against Oregon the next week. I like the Red Raiders to pull the upset in this spot. Now, Tech does avoid Oklahoma. on the Big 12 schedule and gets K-State and TCU in Lubbock. There are 5 road games on that schedule: West Virginia, Baylor, BYU, Kansas, Texas. None of those are easy road games. And you're talking about a win total of 7.5. And I don't care if you say, well, West Virginia's down. That's still not an easy road game. Win total is 7.5. That's a tall hill to climb. But I think for a well-coached team with a veteran quarterback and strong offensive and defensive lines, I'm going to go with Texas Tech over the total of 7.5. And bet on Joey McGuire to win at least 8, despite this tough schedule, which I think makes it tough to be too optimistic about Tech, because Oklahoma's got a really soft schedule. Texas Tech does not.
No, they don't. And you mentioned the Wyoming game. I believe you could still find a 14.5 if you look hard. So 14.5s are still out there. Paul Stone, as we've talked about, and we respect his knowledge when it comes to Texas football. And he said he's taken the points with Wyoming, and he's called the outright upset of Texas Tech over Oregon. I think we're all in kind of lockstep there. But it's funny, and I'm going to ask you this question because you hear this a lot, the popular teams. I bet Oregon State over their win total. They seem to be a pretty popular team.
Oh, yeah.
I do wonder, though, as people I respect, in this line of work, Matt, kind of put their opinions out there earlier and earlier. Those opinions, you're not hearing kind of the so-called square opinions all that much early on in the year. I feel like you're going to hear those square opinions later on, as we get closer and closer to the season. So, I said Texas Tech's a popular team, but I bet Oregon State over, and they are a pretty popular team. Look, I put out a play yesterday on VSiN Primetime, Matt, that I like the Packers to go over their win total. And our good friend, the Bear, Chris Felica, said, I haven't seen anybody, say that they want to go under on the Packers. Well, I would say if you go ask around normal bettors, they probably think the Packers will stink because they lost Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know. I mean, there are people out there like Brett McMurphy, like Paul Stone, like yourself that are really high on Texas Tech. And I respect those opinions, even if those are, quote unquote, becoming popular.
It's funny you mentioned the Packers, because I put out that Packers play in the middle of June. I wrote the NFC North for the VSiN betting guide, and I love the Packers when I got done with everything. And I played them over 7.5. I got the Packers at 5-1 to win the division. And I feel like, Tim, I was talking about the Packers and hyping them up before anyone was. And I've heard a lot more Packers support, I think, in the last several weeks. But, you never know which team's going to become popular. But I also think that you're right that when you say a team's become popular, we're kind of talking in this circle that we work in where we hear each other's opinions on the air, on the betting network, and that may not be an accurate tell of what the public's going to play, too. The public could be opposite. I think the public could be under on the Packers at 7.5, like you said, thinking that, well, forget this team. They're going to suck without Aaron Rodgers. And the same public bettors are hammering the Jets to win the Super Bowl. So, yeah, maybe making too much of that in terms of a team being popular at this stage, because it's just popular with a bunch of us who analyze it and talk about it on a betting network, and we hear each other's opinions. So that could be the case. I think, we're probably not a fair representation of how the public's going to play it and what the public is going to think is popular. So that's a fair point.
Yeah. So speaking of popular, a team that was very popular from the public and not so much with the Sharps, and the public won a lot of money, at least early on, the TCU Horned Frogs. What will they look like in 2023 after a run to the national championship a year ago? We're going to take a quick break here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Talk some Horned Frogs next. And we're back. VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Folks, if you haven't done so by now, head over to vsin.com/subscribe. Our VSiN College Football Betting Guide has been out for a couple of weeks now, previews of all 133 teams. We've got different offers available, $199 all the way through the Super Bowl. You get everything we have to offer. Or if you want to dip your toe in a little bit, $19 a month to start off. So VSiN.com/subscribe. Getting to TCU, Matt Youmans, the Horned Frogs last year were, a stunning revelation. They continued to find ways to win close games, 6 wins in games decided by a touchdown or less. I was on the wrong side of a couple of those. Their win over Baylor, thank God I took the points because that would have ripped my heart out. But ultimately, they beat Michigan in a crazy Fiesta Bowl in the semifinals, and then they walk into the national championship and get ripped limb from limb against Georgia. But all in all, just a phenomenal first season for Sonny Dykes there at TCU. Win total at 7.5. So the market's anticipating that step back, and a lot of pieces are gone, as I'm sure you'll get into. Max Duggan is gone. Quentin Johnston is gone. Kendre Miller is gone. So what will this TCU team look like, Matt, in 2023? And what do you feel about their win total sitting at 7.5?
I'm not really going to give the Frogs the benefit of the doubt here. I think they're a fringe top 25 team. Paul Stone had a higher rating on TCU than I do. I think it's just a lot to lose Max Duggan, Kendre Miller, Quentin Johnston, from a team that really overachieved last year. Chandler Morris, a third-year sophomore, 3 career starts, going to be your quarterback, it appears. I do like the coaching staff. I've always liked Sonny Dykes going back many years. I think he's got a sharp offensive line. Kendall Briles, new offensive coordinator, is I think, a really smart hire, too, away from the Arkansas staff. The defense loses a lot. It still should be pretty good. My problem here is, a lot of times you look for regression in teams or players. I think everything bounced TCU's way last year. Like you said, they were fortunate to beat Okie State and Baylor. They're not going to be catching teams by surprise. TCU is probably going to win 6 of its first 8 games, but the schedule gets tough late. You got road games at Texas Tech and Oklahoma, home games, Texas and Baylor. I don't know, Tim. I've got to go under 7.5 here on TCU. I think they just lose too much in terms of offensive production and stars for this team to get to 8-4 against this schedule. And typically, when everything bounces your way one year, it goes the opposite way the next. I wouldn't be surprised if TCU is a 6-6 type of team.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Not a play that I have, but you can get plus money on the under, plus 110 right now on 7.5. You mentioned things going wrong. Baylor could be that case in point. This team is, in the 3 years of Dave Aranda, the COVID season, they go 2-7. They turn around, they win the conference in 2021 with that thrilling victory, goal line stand against Oklahoma State. They win the bowl game, albeit Matt Corral got hurt against Mississippi, or for Mississippi, in that Sugar Bowl. And then last year they go 6-6 and they lose their bowl game to Air Force. So Dave Aranda's squad, they open up the season home to Texas State. Then they play Utah in a hell of a non-conference game. And then they have an FCS opponent before getting things going. Their first 4 games are all at home. 5 of their first 6 are at home before they have a bye week. Matt, Blake Shapen's still down there in Waco as their starting quarterback. So you're looking at a win total 7 minus 115 to the over at Circa, 17-1 at Circa, 18-1 at DraftKings. Do you expect this roller coaster ride that has been the Dave Aranda era to take that dip or that rise again after a sluggish 6-6 regular season last year?
I actually like this Baylor team a little bit. You mentioned a lot of the things I was going to say about this team. I'll just say that Blake Shapen is one of those quarterbacks I think has got a potential to take a big jump this year. I was a little disappointed in the numbers he put up a year ago, but you got Richard Reese back, top rusher on this team. Backfield's loaded with talent. I think you've got some pretty good tight ends and wideouts. The line is a little bit inexperienced, and this is a Big 12 with a lot of really good offensive lines, but I still think you got an offense here that's going to average about 30 points per game. I'm surprised Dave Aranda's defense is not better. He did such a good job at LSU and Wisconsin. I think it'll probably be good enough Baylor looks like a classic middle of the pack team to me. By the way, how the hell does Long Island get on your schedule? Come on, man. Come on, that should not happen. Um, I, Tim, I got a few years ago. I didn't even know Long Island was fielding a football team. You remember when they had a run and gun college basketball team? But Baylor playing Long Island, I just don't see a point in non-conference games like this. I think the Bears are going to be live dogs in those September home games against Utah and Texas. So I like this team a little bit because I'm putting my faith in Dave Aranda. A lot of times when you're breaking down teams and projecting, you got to bet on the coaches you like and bet against the coaches you don't. And obviously, it helps if they got a veteran quarterback and a lot of experience returning. And I think Baylor's got enough check marks in those categories that I would lean over 7, but I think it's probably going to be a 7-5 type of team. So I would say that this win total is right where it should be.
You know, Matt, the Long Island Sharks last year lost 37-0 to Toledo and 63-10 to Kent State. So you don't think they can hang with Baylor?
No, and I don't even think they should be hanging on Baylor's schedule. I seriously, I hate it when teams schedule games like this that they so outclass you. Tim? What do you take away from a game like this if you're Dave Aranda? Okay, you can play a lot of your 3rd, 4th, and 5th string guys, right? That's about it.
Pretty much. No, that is you're absolutely right. So right now Baylor 18-1 at DraftKings, and then there's a pretty sizable drop from them to the next kind of group, which is UCF, Kansas, and Oklahoma State, which I know you've got to play on. But let's start with the Jayhawks because Kansas last year started the year 5-0, got into the top 25, had College Game Day come to Lawrence for the first time in school history. And they got to a bowl game. They ultimately did cover that bowl game against Arkansas in what was just a wild back and forth game at the Liberty Bowl, 55-53 loss for the Jayhawks. But they came back down to earth a little bit, Matt, as the year went on. But as mentioned, they got that win over Oklahoma State late in the season to get to bowl eligibility before getting beat up pretty good on their end of the season. But this is a team that brings back a ton. They bring back, both quarterbacks, which I think is important. Jalen Daniels and then Jason Bean, their backup, who was thrust into action when Daniels got hurt. All their top rushers are back. All their top receivers are back. There's part of me, Matt, and we've talked about it on this podcast, that wanted to fade Kansas this year with a win total sitting at 6, juice to the under at circa plus 105 to the under at DraftKings. But I'm not going to get to the window on the Jayhawks. I have too much respect for Lance Leipold. I really do like, Jalen Daniels as a quarterback. So for me personally, I'm going to stay off, but I do understand why people would look to fade the Jayhawks this year.
Can you find a win total of 5.5 out there on Kansas? Have you seen that anywhere?
I haven't seen one lately, but while you give your analysis, let me poke around. I thought I saw a 5.5 at some point. I don't know if it got scooped up.
There was, at some point, there was a 5.5. I'm going through right now, looking mostly. I'm seeing pretty much 6 everywhere. I would definitely bet over 5.5 on this team. Again, this is a coach I really like, and the quarterbacks too. Jalen Daniels is a dual threat, and Kansas started 5-0 when he was healthy. He went down to injury in that game that they lost to TCU, 38-31. And they lost 6 of 7. But Jason Bean, like you said, is back. The top 3 running backs come back. Top 3 receivers and 4 or 5 linemen return. As an offense that scored 35.6 points per game. Tim, I think the Jayhawks finished the season on a high note. I'll disagree with some people because I had them as 2.5-point underdogs in that 55-53 loss to Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl. So they covered. I think that should have been something that they carried momentum into the offseason off that underdog cover in the Liberty Bowl. That's something positive they could build. I think you had the 2.5 with Kansas too, didn't you? Or not?
I sure did.
Okay. So I thought they finished on a great high note last year with that cover in the Liberty Bowl. But again, you look at the schedule, Missouri State, Illinois, BYU at home, road game in Nevada. You could have a very similar script to a year ago where the Jayhawks start 4-0. They've got that opportunity before they play Texas I'll never forget in 2021 when Kansas rolled in there with basically an unknown coach to a lot of people and stunned Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns 57-56 as 31-point road dogs. You wonder why I don't believe in Sark? Okay, that's part of the reason why too many instances like that in Sark's past. I think K-State or Kansas has a pretty tough league schedule. Away from home, they catch Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Cincinnati. Those are beatable opponents. I would say if Daniel stays healthy, Jayhawks can win 7. Who knows? Maybe they can win 8. But I'm not going to fade this team. I like the coach. I think he's a bet-on coach. He's still building this program. Got a lot of firepower back offensively. And the schedule, I can find 6 wins on it. If not 7, everything goes right. But again, this is one of those cases where the win total is a big deal. If you can find 5.5, I'll play it over. At 6, I'll probably just leave it alone.
Yeah, same analysis. 6.5 under was out there available, earlier this offseason. I think, a team like Kansas, as we saw last year, one of my best bets on the podcast last year was them against Oklahoma State, because that was really the shot that they had to get the bowl eligibility. It was a banged up Oklahoma State team, and they went out and took care of business and got to a bowl. And I think, for programs like Kansas, getting to a bowl means a lot. And I could certainly see this team fighting for a 6th win. Speaking of Oklahoma State, one of your best bets that you wrote up for the VSiN College Football Betting Guide was this Oklahoma State win total. They're 40-1 to win the conference at DraftKings. Win total sitting at 6.5. DraftKings -110 to the under. Circa is -125 to the under. So what do you expect to see from the Pokes in 2023?
Not a lot that's positive. Actually, when I was going through doing a lot of research on teams nationally, I kept saying transfer from Oklahoma State. I thought, man, Mike Gundy lost a lot of players, and he did. I think he was one of the biggest losers in the transfer portal. Lost a lot of key players. Now, it's tough to – I would say it's tough to bet against Gundy in general because he's going into his 19th season. He's made 17 consecutive bowl games. But he's off a 7-win season. This is a relatively soft schedule. And Spencer Sanders, the starting quarterback the past 2 years, left for Ole Miss. I don't get this one, Tim. He was going to be the starting quarterback at Oklahoma State, and he leaves for Ole Miss where he's got to compete for the job. Oklahoma State was 6-1 last season before Sanders went down to an injury, and he started he was in and out, and he was banged up, and they were never the same team since. Okie State lost 5 of his final 6. So now you're counting on Alan Bowman, a former starter at Texas Tech, kind of a middle-of-the-road type of quarterback. Went to Michigan, couldn't see the field. He's the favorite to win the job. I know you're a big fan of Gunnar Gundy, quarterback there in Stillwater. And offense that just doesn't seem to have a lot coming back. I think this offense could be ugly. And again, I talked about Gundy being one of the biggest losers in the transfer portal. Mason Cobb, star linebacker, off to USC. Jabbar Muhammad, star cornerback, off to Washington. And this was a defense that allowed 29 points per game. I think the defense could be worse. Now, the win total at 6.5, I'm not going to argue, and say, wow, this is way too high. Because Gundy's got the track record, and the schedule excludes Texas, TCU, and Baylor. It gets all 4 Big 12 newcomers, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. The schedule is ridiculously hospitable to Gundy and the Cowboys, but I don't think he's going to get to 7-5, even with a soft schedule. He can continue his bowl streak and go to 18 straight bowl games with a 6-6 record, and I think that's probably what's going to happen. And I'll give you a spot here. Bet against Oklahoma State in a non-conference game at Arizona State in September. I think the Sun Devils going to pull off the win. I hope so, because I got Arizona State over 4.5 and Oklahoma State under 6.5, so it's a big game for me, but I like the Sun Devils to take down the Cowboys in that one.
Yeah, those are always fun when you have those Dueling win totals. It was just announced the other day that Utah State and Colorado State, it will be a primetime game. Utah State is calling it their homecoming. I've got Utah State under, Colorado State over. So hopefully Rams are pissed that they got notched for homecoming there, and we can get that win and help out the win total. But another team, Matt, that Matt Campbell probably should have left a couple years ago, taking any job that he could have got. He was maybe a little bit too picky, and ultimately he could be on the hot seat here. We'll see with all of this gambling suspensions and investigations going on. So Iowa State, their win total sits at 5. It's plus 115 to the over at DraftKings, minus 105 to the over at Circa. It seems, will be without starting quarterback Hunter Deckers, starting running back Jarrell Brock, starting tackle Jake Remsburg, one of their starting tight ends, Deshaun Hanika, Hanika, and then Isaiah Lee, their nose tackle, has already left the program. He started 12 games last year, and he reportedly bet on Texas 2 years ago, catching 6 against Iowa State, a game that Iowa State actually won and covered. Right. So what do we do with Iowa State this year? A lot of people I respect out there said if you can find anything, south of a field goal with Iowa, lay it with the Hawkeyes in week 2. Maybe look to take the points with Northern Iowa in week 1 when that line ultimately pops. What are you doing with Iowa State? Win total sitting at 5.
Yeah, win total was 5.5 when I wrote up the VSiN betting guide, and I called for the under. I didn't bet it, and I think it's too late to jump on the bus here at 5. I think 6 or 7 wins looks like the best case scenario for this team. Hey, you're right. Matt Campbell should have got out of town. He should have bolted after he lost Brock Purdy, Breece Hall. I think that's when Iowa State peaked. Cyclones offense dipped to 20.2 points per game last year. Scored 14 points or fewer in 7 games. It's tough to watch. And I think this offense is still going to be bad. You lose Will McDonald, your best defensive player, the 15th overall pick by the Jets. Only one starter that returns on the defensive front. Now you do have a schedule early where you can pick up some wins. Northern Iowa, Ohio, Oklahoma State. But this Ohio team's pretty good. And like you said, I kind of like the Hawkeyes in that game against the Cyclones too. I think I would play that one. Looking through some of the stuff here, some of my schedule notes. Yeah, again, I think 6 wins is the best case scenario for Campbell. And not like Hunter Deckers is going to be a huge loss. I didn't think much of him as a quarterback. He had 19 touchdowns, 14 interceptions last year. There was a chance he was going to develop, but I think you got to play Iowa State under or pass. I mean, it looks this program's got a dark cloud hovering over it right now, and not a lot of talent. And you're going to have a new quarterback, and I think you have to play the Cyclones under or pass. But the 5.5 number was obviously more appealing.
4-8 last year, 6 losses by a touchdown or less, 1 win by a touchdown or less. So, positive regression you would think in theory, but I'm with you. I can't touch this Iowa State team. Matt, I'm going to lump all the newcomers together, and you can kind of just fire through as we do it. UCF has the highest win total of the newcomers, 6.5 at DraftKings, 7 at Circa. They're around 35-1 to win the conference. BYU is at 80-1. Win total sitting at 5.5. Cincinnati as high as 150-1 at Circa. Win total 5.5 at DraftKings, 5 at Circa. And then Houston has the longest odds of anybody in this conference, 250-1 at Circa, 4.5 win total for the Cougs in year 1 of the Big 12. So looking at the 4 newcomers, Matt, anything jump out to you about them?
Yeah, sure. And I was going to make one note about Iowa State. Now, the totals, the odds makers know this, and everybody knows it, but Iowa State's going to play some really ugly, low-scoring games, I think, this season. So keep an eye on that. I think Central Florida is the best of the 4 newcomers to the conference. But but the Knights also have to play Boise, Kansas State, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech on the road. So it's not going to be easy to get over a win total of 6.5. I actually kind of lean under on Central Florida. I do like Gus Malzahn as a coach, and there are a lot of things I like about the UCF team. But, man, that schedule is really difficult. So look for UCF to be the best of the 4 newcomers, even though the results might not show it in terms of the record. I'm not a big fan of Dana Holgorsen at Houston, but the win total has been so depressed in the market at 4.5 that I think you can make a case to the over. Donovan Smith transferred to Houston after 2 years in and out as the starter at Texas Tech. I kind of like Donovan Smith. 6'5", 240. He can make some plays. He had a big game in a double overtime victory over Houston, actually, in Lubbock last year. He steps in for Clayton Tune, who I've been watching as a backup for the Arizona Cardinals. He was a 5th-round pick. Tank Dell is gone. Big loss to this offense. Tank Dell's a stud, and you're seeing it with the Houston Texans right now. There's still some talent here offensively. Very interesting schedule for Houston, a manageable Big 12 home schedule with TCU, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State. I'm not sure Holgorsen's team's going to win a league game on the road. I think the win total is probably right at 4.5. I could only lean over, thinking of maybe 5 and 7 is somewhat realistic for the Cougars, but I don't think Houston's going to be a bowl team. West Virginia, Neil Brown's going to get ripped by a lot of people who think he's been a bust and he's on the coaching hot seat, but I kind of like Neil Brown, some of the things he's done, and he opens the season at Penn State, and that's going to be a tough one. They're probably going to get blown out, and it's a tough way to open the season because, man, I really, really like Penn State this season.
Yep.
Garrett Green is kind of a wild card for the Mountaineers, dual threat quarterback, and he's got some talent here. I think this is an offense that's going to be able to run the ball, Tim. And this sometimes the running game gets forgotten when people analyze it, and it's all about the quarterbacks that spread the field in college football. We can still run the ball, control games on the ground. And Phil Steele noted this in his magazine. I thought was really interesting. West Virginia is 18-4 under Neil Brown when rushing for 100-plus yards. And I think this West Virginia team is going to be running for 100-plus yards on a regular basis. I really like the potential of the running game. The defense returned 7 starters. Now it was a bad defense. It allowed about 33 points a game. But if you can run the ball effectively, that's complementary football that's going to help your defense. So I don't think West Virginia is going to be as bad as some people think. Win total of 4.5 is probably the right number. But look for that West Virginia team to be a little bit more competitive than some people think. And who else we haven't talked about? Cincinnati and BYU, right?
Cincinnati, BYU. Yeah, those two.
Cincinnati, I lean under 5.5. Actually, I bet this under 5.5, not just a lean, because I don't like Scott Satterfield as a hire. Big fan of Luke Fickell. He went 31-5 the past 3 years. Desmond Ridder and Ben Bryant were pretty good quarterbacks for the Bearcats. Now you're going to start Emory Jones, who was a transfer from Florida and Arizona State. He won 6 games at Florida 2 years ago. 1-6 as a starter at Arizona State last year. I'm not convinced that he's going to be the right guy for the job. Satterfield's got a ground-based offense. Unless Emory Jones turns into a superstar, I don't think Cincinnati's getting over this win total of 5.5. Defensive line is going to be pretty good. But Ivan Pace has got to be replaced. All-American, led the team with 137 tackles and 10 sacks. That's a tough guy to replace in that Bearcats defense. This move up is going to be difficult in terms of the schedule, even though the Bearcats do miss Texas, Kansas State, and TCU on the schedule. I just think Cincinnati is going to be a 4-8 or 5-7 type of team. So I did bet under 5.5. I think Cincinnati's actually, there's a chance, could be pretty bad, and the drop-off could be dramatic for the Bearcats in Satterfield's first year. BYU, under 5.5 is my lean. This is not a bet for me yet. Kalani Sitake, not one of my favorite coaches. He does have 15 starters returning. Keaton Slovis, who's not one of my favorite quarterbacks. He started his career at USC, transferred to Pitt, And he's on his third stop here in Provo. I never thought he was as good as the hype when he had 30 touchdown passes at USC as a freshman. He's okay. I'm not a big fan of him. But one of the keys for BYU is Aiden Robbins, star running back at UNLV, goes to Provo as a transfer. I think he's going to make a big impact. You got some pretty good wide receivers. I just don't know, Tim, if the BYU defense can hold up against the run in the Big 12. And last year we saw BYU just get stomped at home by Arkansas, 52-35, and the Cougars could not stop the run at all. I actually have to say under 5.5 would be the play here for me, even though BYU is going to be favored at home against Sam Houston, Southern Utah, and Cincinnati. I don't know if you can find 3 more wins on the schedule. But 6 would be the ceiling for this BYU team that lost Jaron Hall at quarterback, and Jaron Hall was a big-time playmaker.
Yeah, a game you mentioned with BYU struggling against the run, Arkansas is the one that stands out. But in Vegas, when they played Notre Dame, a one-dimensional Notre Dame team, they gave up 234 yards on the ground. Yep. And Notre Dame pretty much controlled that game from start to finish. Before we put a bow on this, Matt, and just kind of recap best bets, here are some week 1 lines. And we mentioned a couple of these games, but I'll just run through them and see if anything kind of jumps out at you. Obviously, some crooked lines. UCF taking on Kent State. Kent State, by the way, they returned 0 starters on offense. They could be an absolute train wreck this year. That's a Thursday night game. UCF is laying 35. Baylor taking on Texas State, another team that could really struggle this year. G.J. Kinney is their starting new head coach from Incarnate Word, so a unique offense there. That line at 25 or 26 for the Bears. Oklahoma laying 33.5 against Arkansas State, as Butch Jones will probably be fired at some point this year down there in Jonesboro. TCU and Colorado. This is big noon kickoff. The Coach Prime debut. You can catch 21 if you like the Buffs. This has moved a little bit. A game that we talked about, Texas Tech at Wyoming. If you like the Pokes, you can catch 14.5. Texas is laying 35 against Rice. Do they take the foot off the gas in the second half as they have Alabama waiting in the wings there in week 2? You mentioned this one, primetime NBC. West Virginia is catching 20 against Penn State. And then probably, Matt, the most competitive, intriguing game in the Big 12 week 1 is Houston and UTSA. Last year, this game went to triple overtime. Yeah. Houston was able to win it 37-34. And right now, that game at a pick. Some shops even have the Roadrunners laying 1. So when it comes to week 1, you alluded to Wyoming catching the 2 touchdowns against Texas Tech. Anything else intriguing before we do a wrap on our best bets for the season?
Yeah, of course. I think the Colorado TCU game's incredibly intriguing because Buffalo's got some firepower on offense. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. I want to see what the Buffaloes can do. And then they should be in no better position to put a scare into teams than they will be early in the season before injuries and attrition kind of take a toll on that thin Colorado roster. So I think the Buffaloes got a chance to come out of the gate and actually surprise some people by how good they look. And, Tim, we talked about TCU. I'm not crazy about this TCU team. You got a lot to replace here. So you got to replace all your stars from a team that went to the playoff. And I'm just not sure you can do that right away in the first game. So, man, I'm intrigued by that one quite a bit. I want to see if and also, Tim, we talked about this in the Pac-12 preview. I think Dion made a great hire, or I should call him Coach Prime, made a great hire with his offensive coordinator at Colorado, former Kent State coach. And I think that's going to be an exciting offense to watch. So, man, I might end up on Colorado in that game. Who knows? It could be dead wrong, but I haven't bet it yet. I tell you the one game I'm betting for sure, I'm going to bet Wyoming as a 14. You said there's a 14.5 out there, so I'm going to have to ask you where the hell you saw the 14.5. When I was looking at the screen, I couldn't find – I saw 13.5s and 14s. But, yeah, I'll take 14.5.
Caesars has a 14.5 right now.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I see some stray numbers at Caesars once in a while that are off market, so I'm going to have to set up a Caesars app, I believe. I'm going to take the 14.5, and I'm going to bet that today because I think that's the best number you're going to get. Give me Wyoming plus 14.5 against Texas Tech. And then just like Paul Stone, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to be on Texas Tech the next week when the Red Raiders host Oregon.
All right, there you go. Plus 14.5 for Wyoming for Matt. And then Matt, I'll just put a bow on my my win total or my best bet for the conference, as we talked about in the start. I'm on Texas to win this conference. Of all the options that are out there, I do think they could make the playoff this year at 3-1. But for me, the best bet is for them to win this conference at plus, I think 105 is the best price that is available right now. Anything with a plus by it, I think is worth a look. I wrote that up for the guide at plus 110. Still think it's worth even 5 cents less to roll with Texas here. So what were your best bet win totals as we put a bow on the Big 12?
All right. I know you want to put a bow on the Big 12, so let's do that here. Let's go Cincinnati under 5.5. Oklahoma State under 6.5. Let's see. There's a bunch. Texas Tech over 7.5. I'm not going to go all unders, even though there's a lot of teams here. I lean under in this conference. And, well, we can't get the 5.5 with Iowa State anymore, so I'll go ahead and pass. Like I said, I lean Kansas over if you can find a 5.5. I'm not sure you can find that number out there. And I'll probably just leave it at that because if you want to talk about best bets, I'll stick with the unders on the Bearcats and the Cowboys and the over on the Red Raiders.
All right, there you go. Make sure to check out the full write-up from Matt on the Big 12 and our VSiN college football betting guide. Of course, Matt and I will be back breaking down games maybe next week as we get ready for a small Week 0 slate, but Notre Dame and USC part of that Week 0 slate here in 2023. So just a reminder, a recap: Cincinnati under 5.5, Oklahoma State under 6.5, Red Raiders, guns up, over 7.5. Wyoming plus the 14.5 at Caesars. Those are Matt's best bets for the Big 12. I'm on Texas to win the conference. Anything with a plus sign by it, roll with hook 'em horns, as we hope the infamous words of Joe Tessitore are correct, Matt, that Texas is back, folks. There you have it. That is the VSiN College Football Betting podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will talk to you later on here on VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.